Welcome to the Wolf Connection podcast. I'm your host, John Kalfa. Let's talk about some wolves. On this episode of the podcast, we actually have human beings in the office/studio with Stephen and I.
Real humans.
Our director of programs at Wolf Connection, Amanda Beer, is back with us. Hello, Amanda. Nice to have you back.
Hi, John. Good to be here.
And one of our program leads for our youth programs and multiple programs around here at Wolf Connection, Misha Thomas. Nice to have you on the podcast for the first time.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
You can tell. Misha's very excited. She's over there staring into the mic.
I am. I'm just trying to maneuver this giant microphone.
Exactly. Yeah. You can move it, back, forth, left, right, whatever is comfortable for you.
Pretty well.
So I wanted to bring you both in because there was just a program that concluded, I believe, a week or so ago, and it's one of really the staple programs that comes out of Wolf Connection, which is Women and Wolves. And you two are two of the facilitators of that program. You do such a great job in making that a wonderful experience for the participants that come up here. And so I wanted to get into exactly what the program is about. How did it come to pass? And you guys can jump right in at any point and just let us know, because there's another program for Women and Wolves. You said October 10th, right before we started, right, Amanda? So what makes this program unique, I guess, out of the other ones that we do? And how did it get its start?
That cover the history.
Great question, John. So, as you've discussed on the podcast before, and I know we discussed last time I was here, we have these signature programs we do with youth. Wolf Connection's really invested in the next generation, and serving young people, at a time when they're developing, and to help them find their voice and to understand pack mentality. So Women and Wolves is a program for adults. Certainly at Wolf Connection, we offer experiences for adults to visit, and they are programmatic, but Women and Wolves is, really embodies the concept of wolf therapy, like what we do with the kids. So even though it's a single day program, it is an introductory program. Started out as being a 4-hour program, and we quickly realized that was not enough time or space to really honor the connection between women and wolves. So it's now a 6-hour program. And we do the deepest dive that we can for a 6-hour program, really, immersing these women in the space here and having connection with each other and with the wolves. I'll go back to your question before I diverge of how it started. So our colleague, Julia Capelli, started the program. Gosh, I should have come with this information, but
2017.
2017. So we're in our 4th year now. So in 2017. And, I also have to give credit, of course, to the book, Women That Run With Wolves. That's not what our program is based off of, but Clarissa Pinkola Estes. Did I say that right, Misha? I hope I'm doing justice to
Estes
her
or
name. Estes. Wrote this amazing book, and she's a psychologist and a storyteller, and really in touch with what I think so many women are craving now, is this kind of primal connection with themselves and with the wild, and particularly with wolves. And so, we give her credit, again, not because our program is based on that, but because so many women have read that book, that I think when they see this program, Women and Wolves, it brings to mind whatever evolved in them, or whatever transformation they experienced when they read that book. And so they kind of come to the program often naming that book or being attuned to that. So I need to give credit there. And, I can let Misha speak a little bit more. But the program started with Julie as a 4-hour program, and it's just evolved over time. And each year we pick a different theme, which we can speak to a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I just want to riff on that. I think this program is so wholly and uniquely Wolf Connections, but there is kind of this, a lot of women come to this because when Clarissa Pinkola Estes wrote this book, the other part of the title is Women Who Run With the Wolves, the Wild Woman Archetype. So it's really something that I think a lot of women wake up to is like, there's not a lot of literal talk in this book, Women Who Run with Wolves, right? About actually getting to embrace or to be in the presence of a wolf. But it is about this wild woman archetype. And what she's ultimately positing is like, the wild woman archetype is just the woman who is connected to her intuition and her instincts. And that woman, that wild woman archetype is as endangered as the wolf is, right? So I think, we'll riff on this, but like one of the beautiful things is like women are just coming to have ultimately like an experience, like a mirroring experience of themselves, through the other women in the group and through the wolves. They ultimately just dig within to find something in themselves, that buried archetype, that buried intuition and instinct, that part of the woman that knows exactly what to do. But, societally, it's tamed out of us a lot.
Yeah, I mean, so when these women come on the property, is it sort of like an instant, because you're talking about a 6-hour program, which is I believe that's roughly the time frame we have with the kids, but we get 8 weeks. So go into, I guess, for some of these women, is it sort of a quick, they get on the property and things are already shifting for them? Or, let me even go back. Like, what goes into the preparation for you, for the two of you, the team? What are the things that you guys have to really get together and formulate a plan for this program? Because it's, there's usually at least, I would think six individuals that are running it with you guys every time. So what are some of the things that you guys have to get together and brainstorm about, especially if you're doing multiple programs a year? Because Women and Wolves isn't just a one-off every year. You have multiple programs. So what are some of the things you guys are brainstorming about and figuring out what you want to facilitate with these women?
Yeah, I'll speak to that, John. I think it's a very, and Misha can jump in, a very organic process. Mm-hmm. We try to structure the program so we have this theme and we have a structure set up for the day, and we also want to invite what they bring, right? So what we're tasked with is coming up with a theme and a focus, while we're very intentional about wanting each woman to have a unique experience based on what they're trying to get or what they see mirrored in themselves with the wolves. So we kind of come up with a broad theme, lay out a structure, and let the rest happen.
Yeah.
So fortunately, in the last year, Misha has joined, and another colleague, Genevieve, helped us out as well. So we had the opportunity to brainstorm. And before that, I would work with Julia on it. I find myself so hesitant to say this as a psychologist who only really addresses my spiritual side here.
Yeah.
If ever there were a place,
right?
Let it out.
If ever there were a place, but typically before, the week before every program, I personally spend a lot of time, clearly weeks out when we plan it. And then as it gets closer, spending time with the wolves, spending time with some of the wolves I feel inspired by, and really trying to feel into what are some of the things coming up. I usually, our late alpha female Maya, I go sit at her grave and meditate and, just take time to be still and silent and see what emerges and what resonates, and then check in with the rest of the team. How is this feeling for you? And we had kind of a similar process, I think, with you and I, Misha, and when Genevieve was working with us as well, of feeling into it. And I would love, you spoke so beautifully to this at the last program, Misha, but
the theme
and then how that played out for 2020.
Right.
I'd love for you to speak to that.
Yeah. And I think like part of what Amanda's touching on is there's this duality of, like with any program at Wolf Connection, there's a lot of moving parts. You have to go in and with intention, right?
Right.
Like
yeah, absolutely.
There's nature, and she's unpredictable, and the wolves, and then the women. You never know what energy they're bringing. So it's like holding that like duplicitousness of like thinking about it and not over planning or not overthinking, right? Like having a loose skeleton for the day. And it's interesting. I think that's the beauty, is just like being with what shows up that day, like having a blueprint and then just going like, that's all it was. And let's just be with what showed up today, and it's, I think maybe what Amanda was segging into is like, we've had a lot, we haven't like voiced it necessarily. Maybe I'll just speak for myself and take ownership. I think that there's been a sense like with everything that is going on in the collective right now. And we've done 3 Women and Wolves since quarantine started, since protests started, and I think that there was this sense of like, oh my gosh, we're all feeling into this collective energy. What's going to show up?
Right.
And it's never exactly what you think. It's interesting, at least in terms of what women bring energetically or what they've reported. It's just still kind of whatever is individually going on with them, but still within the collective sphere. So I think it's just really amazing to be nimble, just be in the moment, just like a wolf, because you never know where the moment's going to take you. But yeah, I can talk to the theme. I don't know if you want to.
Go for it. No, I just think it's so fascinating because I think in relation to the programs we do with the kids, it's also the same with adults, right? Is we're bringing all of these individuals into a collective. And again, correct me if I'm wrong, it seems as though from what you have all experienced is that many individuals are feeling these same emotions, these same feelings, these same, individually. And then when they come here as a collective, it's almost, it seems to, give them onus to be able to be like, this is okay that I'm feeling this way, or these feelings are all right, kind of a deal. Am I right? And I mean, that's kind of what we allow with the kids, is to give them that space to express what's going on, and there's no judgment there.
Yeah. Right. Well, I think the thing that I would say in addition to that, John, is because, a lot of people think about that when they think of traditional therapy, right? It's a space to have my feelings.
Absolutely.
And of course that's beautiful. But just to hit on what is so unique and I think grounding about this, all the programs we do, and particularly this program with the women, we allowed a little more space for expression during COVID because we know how hungry people are for it. But we've literally had, whether it was 4 or 6 hour program, where the entire program, there's very, very little vocal expression, right? We allow them to drop into the experience. Sometimes we do journaling, sometimes we don't, but we really keep inviting the women to look inward and be present with what comes in without having to verbally process it all. Because the wolves kind of teach us about this primal knowing that doesn't always have to be expressed and validated, and this back and forth that humans do. Yeah. So we've had entire programs where, we'll do a circle and each woman will put in a word or some kind of brief expression. But they'll do a lot of the processing internally. And I think just being held, not by like speaking something and being validated, but by being seen. Wholly. By being in the circle with these other women and being felt and seen and experienced without having to justify themselves. Yeah. So I just want to name that in terms of this unique component that the wolves teach us and we get to embody. And then many of the women will leave saying, they had a profound experience and learned so much about themselves and recognize that, they didn't necessarily have to.
You don't have to verbalize it, right?
Yeah. Not always.
Yeah. And I think you're right, because when we're here, I mean, do we hear the wolves howl? Yeah, but it's not a constant, they howl for a reason. Right. And like you said, it's them holding space, it's them taking up their space physically, and in many different ways. Yeah. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
And before you move on to the theme, just based on what you guys are saying, a question popped up for me. Because you're both talking about the energy that women bring forth, right? And I think that's an important topic too. I want to know from your perspectives why it's important or why it's meaningful to have a specific program formulated for those who identify as women.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful, female identifying. The why, I'll just riff and then please jump in. But I think going back to what I said about, when we were paying homage to Clarissa Pinkola Estes, is there, women as a group do feel as though there's a lot of in us that has been tamed, that isn't accepted. The wildness, or a woman who stands in her power is judged, right? So a woman who can just be exactly who she is, who isn't playing a particular role, that invitation doesn't feel extended by society a lot. And it's interesting even, and I'm just going to act as an interpreter of some of the women, but, a lot of them will reflect upon how hard it is to find other women to connect to sometimes, because I think we are oftentimes so inside. We're so insular, where we're trying to play a particular role in society or, within our home, within work. And so I think a lot of women experience each other being just super real and raw with each other, and they don't get that very often in like female identifying places. And so that's been beautiful to see that women will name it in the beginning and go like, I've never felt so close to a bunch of, like female identifying strangers. It's, and again, like Amanda said, it's not because we aired so much about our personal stories or even had so much personal process. It was just that we witnessed and we didn't judge and we were with each other. And so, yeah, it's just incredible. Yeah, and I don't want to get too much into like any sort of politicized thing about women, but it's an invitation that feels really important.
That makes sense.
And I'd love Amanda to jump off that.
Yeah, I just want to add one thing that's coming up, probably because I feel like it was really a prevalent theme that came up at the last Women and Wolves, that what always comes up for me is like women are hungry for this. And what comes up in this moment is what we see a lot of is they might be hungry for it and not know why. I'm not going to speak for every woman, but just as a theme. And we see a lot of women come and the first, why are you here? They say, because I've always been connected to animals, because I love animals. And women have permission to love animals, right?
Yeah.
And then we'll see this theme come up where women have been socialized to caretake and nurture. So sometimes the women will start the program really wanting to caretake and nurture the wolves. And so we get to see this beautiful process that happens where they come in with this, my relationship with animals is as a caretaker. And at times we see this transformation where as this primal, wild, I do not need taken care of, I want to meet you as equals. This wolf and woman meet. The woman is allowed to just be, like Misha said, be still, present, in my power as I connect with this wolf. Neither of us needed to take care of each other, but just being able to be present with one another. So being able to move from like this, what does it mean to be socialized to be a woman, to be just in kind of my core presence as a woman.
I love that you brought that up because that's one of my key takeaways always too, is like we never talk a lot about like, everything that we do here or pack roles or whatnot. Like this is definitely one of those programs because we have 8 weeks with our youth, right? So we talk about pack roles. We talk about, I don't know, just details, or we lean on Leo to give us, wolf facts. But that's not what this is about. This is about an experience of the land, of the wolves, of each other, of ourselves. But one thing I always take away is we usually bring out one of the nannies, if not both of them. And so it's interesting because we will that's a really beautiful leading question of like, what do you think a nanny is? And almost always, many women will raise their hand and say, I identify as a nanny because I take care of everybody else ahead of myself.
Right, but there's multiple ways to think of a nanny.
And so when they get to not only, because we can tell them, right, like that's not exactly what a nanny does. In fact, a nanny probably has the strongest boundaries or, arguably of a lot of the roles. And so when they get to not only witness it, but hear us just kind of gently say, actually, a nanny isn't just caretaking, but a nanny is also exceptional at caretaking themselves, right? And the boundaries. And so that always seems to just be this like aha moment for women, that caretaking isn't about literally giving all of your power and your energy away.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, we see, and so Misha's referring to Luna and Nova, who are two pack nannies. So yeah, I mean, the boundaries and the caretaking they take of themselves. I mean, we even saw it when Steve and I were helping in with one of the enclosures, and and Coda was going out on a hike. Luna immediately, Coda got out of the compound and was immediately correcting him. And then she would go off and they're doing their own thing. They're checking out the situation. So I think you're right. It's being a nanny is not just the one role, I think, that people have been taught over the course of time. There's so many different layers to it.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. Let's dive into the theme because you guys have said so many awesome and powerful things already. So how is the theme selected, or does it come to you guys? And they're smiling across the table with me. So, with everything here, obviously it's so organic. So I know there's probably no process. There's no, like a lot of the things we do here at Wolf Connection. So how is the theme, I guess, come to as a collective when you guys are preparing this?
We've reached the cussing portion. And I just want to say, you can't make this shit up. And I say that because we selected, so I got to walk into this wonderful tradition that I don't know if Julia or Amanda had set up, but in 2019, we had like a banner, like an umbrella theme, which was it Embodied Wisdom? Yeah. And then within every time we added a date, sometimes maybe we would just add like a couple words to that, like just zeroing in on something a little bit more. And so Amanda and another colleague and I in January were having dinner thinking about the theme. And what was resonating for me was embodied emotion. And what I specifically was feeling around that time was the validation to be angry and primal fear, particularly in women, right? Like those are often traits that are not acceptable, right? Or not, they're not ladylike. They're not a good look on women, right? And I was like, I love anger. I love primal fear because those things sometimes drive us towards incredible next things, right? And so when I say like, you can't make this shit up, it was January 2020 looked like, good things on the horizon, perhaps, who knew?
Yeah.
And 2 months later, so much of life as we knew it had shifted. And I think it doesn't matter what gender you identify with, everybody had been dropped into primal embodied emotion.
Yeah.
Right. So we had no crystal ball for that one. That was just fortuitous. I don't know.
Yeah.
Right.
But like I think Amanda's tried to really lay out is that it's all just groundwork, right? Like it's all just an invitation. And everything that happens within the day, the rituals, everything is still just an invitation. But this one felt real, like it felt really incredible. And so I'd love for Amanda to talk about this because in June when we decided, we were kind of just sitting back watching going like, should we do a Women in Wolves? Like everything was just so tenuous in the world. Like, is it safe? It's like, well, we're outside, we're spaced. And we decided to move ahead with embodied emotion, but Amanda felt really called to honor one of our wolves who had unexpectedly passed not too long, Maggie. And so we wanted to honor the primal fear in her it was a lot of wisdom for her. And so we did that in June, and I'll let her say it because I think it's really powerful, and I think Maggie's lessons were powerful. And then we just pivoted just a little bit this last one.
Yeah. Yeah, as Misha said, we picked this theme, embodied emotion, which was beautiful, kind of moving from embodied wisdom to really, really hone in on being in our bodies with our emotion. And we chose for the spring program, which got delayed until June, but we put it out there in the spring. So we chose for that to be about fear and freedom. That was Maggie's inspiration. This again was before COVID.
Yeah.
And before, right at the time when we had the program, the protests had started, things had come to light, I'll say with Black Lives Matter, but clearly Black Lives Matter has been going on for a long time.
Right.
Police have been killing Black folks for a long time, right? But this was coming to a head in the space of COVID where people were really becoming aware of this issue. And so again, we picked this theme of fear and freedom and what does it look like to hold both? So, really what Maggie inspired in me and we chose to play off of was, Maggie lived a life very much in fear. She had had a lot of trauma in her life and, what she was known for was pacing around her habitat. And we would always bring to light for guests or the kids that would act about this when we'd say, why do you think she's pacing? Because she's scared, because she's anxious, because of this. And that reframe of that, she's coping.
Right.
We always want to label things as not as the primal emotion, but the coping. And so, Maggie had found a way to deal with her fear or hesitance when there's a lot of new people around, when she's in a new situation. And at some point, this really landed for me in being with her and watching her that this fear wasn't holding her back. She's a wolf, she's free, and she would take the fear totally in stride. Like, this was just her process of maybe self-protection, maybe understanding this is a new situation, just in her body. How am I going to move through this? And she was always moving through it. And she was always taking steps of courage and, connecting with new humans and going out on leash with new people. And she came out with a program. She's come out with the kids. I mean, doing things that were terrifying, but she was so curious that she would move through that fear. Yeah. And so she really taught me, and I'm sure she taught many others, that fear, as you said, Misha, it's primal and it's normal, and it doesn't have to be a limitation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even when we can look around and say, is there really anything to be afraid of in this moment? Yeah, but my body's telling me there is.
Yeah.
And how do we honor that?
Yeah.
And be with that? And that, can I still be free while I'm experiencing an emotion like fear, anger, these feelings that we want to fix or do something about? And how do you find the freedom within those, what as humans we consider difficult feelings?
Yeah. Which kind of just led us to this one in September, where we were still kind of working under embodied emotion. And again, we just wanted to just like work a little bit underneath that. And we just named it Awakened Truth. And that was just pulling the thread that Amanda's already like laid out, is like, whatever is coming up for anybody at this point, like 6+ months into everything drastically changing, so much awakening to stuff. Let's not judge whatever is coming up at this point. If you are angry, if you're sad, if you're thoughtful, if you're actually doing quite well during this time, whatever it is, there shouldn't be a judgment around it. Like, it's literally just being in it, right? Like honoring that things are coming up, like things are stirred up in us during this time. I think I'll speak for myself, maybe more than many other times in my life, right? And to just not try to transmute that or change that. And it was really beautiful. Sometimes we talk a little bit more about our theme, and others it's just like, again, the organicity of like, let's don't talk too much. Let's just throw out the theme and just watch the day unfold. But we kind of did set that up, and we did come back to that theme a couple of times of just the awakened truth that's coursing through us right now.
Yeah, I feel like that's so powerful that you guys are able to do this program. And not to say even with the kids, we try to keep our talking or our verbal speech to a minimum. But I find it, how is that for you all as you're doing these? I know, Amanda, you were explaining to me, sometimes it's meditating in front of enclosures, it's medicine wheel work. It's how is that as you guys as facilitators, what do you find comes out of that differently than, say, normal speech therapy or things, if we're talking about how I'm feeling or expressing just through verbal, just through talk, whereas there's journaling, there's less spoken word. What are some of the things that have come up for women, if you can speak to any of it, or just even things that come up with you guys, because it seems like such a simple tactic, but to be able to do it as well as you guys have been doing it for multiple programs now for, over the course of, many years, like what are some of the things that are different about that?
Right. Well, the first thing I want to name, John, that's coming up just as we're talking about how organic and how processy, I do want to say we're extremely intentional about this program.
Oh, no, absolutely.
We set up, just so the audience understands, right, that we set up a structure, and we also do work our staff beforehand, getting really grounded, going through the schedule for the day. Yeah. Because, just like the kids teach us, the structure provides the safety. Right. When we're moving from this thing to this thing, like people feel safe. They know what's coming next. So typically, with the program, we have time like an opening circle where we want everyone to kind of witness one another, put their voice in. We practice meeting a couple of the wolves and wolf dogs and do a meditation. Typically every program we allow people to pick an animal to sit with in meditation as well. And so we balance it, right? We offer this ability just to be silenced. That can be uncomfortable. And so then we come back to the group, and allow people to reconnect with one another. I think in response to your question, John, after just naming, holding both the structure and the fluidity, right. I really can't take any credit. I mean, there's just something so amazing about this land and being in the presence of the wolves. And typically one of the first thing that happens for the group is at some point during that opening circle, the pack howls.
Yeah.
And you don't usually get that in talk therapy.
Right.
And you just see, I mean, you feel that in your body, right? I think everyone feels it differently, but it evokes something in you. And so, to me, that I don't put in the most simple terms is it just what an honor and privilege to get to do this work with the wolves and the land. And, we really are the human translators, right? And so it's such a different offering than traditional talk therapy because of that. So there's the same holding space and witnessing and seeing and honoring and challenging. We shut people up sometimes, or we challenge them with a deeper question. So that Misha and I are both trained as therapists, right? So it's not just kumbaya.
A free for all.
We hold and push people as well. And, so much of the magic is being with this pack of wolves.
And that's the intelligence of what you do, is that you're creating some kind of structure that allows you to be a conduit to just receive what this place already does. And that there's intelligence and structure in that. It's not just like I think when we kept saying organic, I was starting to feel like, now we don't want to paint that picture exactly, because they do a lot of specific structured work, but that part of that intelligence is allowing the moment to be whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's really the balance.
And that's more of the organic portion I was.
Yeah.
I was
And this
speaking
place
to,
just does that to, for you in a lot of circumstances where you're like, should I think about every element of this, or just enough so that it's like, meaningful, and then just let the wolves in the land do the rest. But
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's like beautifully said, Stephen, and it's good that you pull through that language, organic, right? Like, as Amanda brought us back,
because I know what you guys, I know what you mean, because I'm
We're
like,
not just woo-woo.
Right.
No, I know.
I'm like,
But
I've seen
sometimes
these
for
things
humans,
happen.
right? Like,
so.
doesn't it take a lot of work to actually be nimble in the moment, to be present in the moment
absolutely, yeah.
after you've planned and planned is it's a hard muscle.
Yeah, to feel good enough to be a conduit for something good to happen. There's a lot of work that happens before that. You don't just wake up like that. There has to be some understanding,
there's got to be a structure, obviously.
Sometimes
and a
even
foundation for it.
you have to be really vigilant about some practice. It doesn't just, there's.
Well, and ultimately what it feels like you're naming, Stephen, is like trust, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a lot to just trust.
That's what it really is.
We're enough. The land's enough, the wolves enough. Like the intention that was set was just more than enough to just allow what shows up. But I did want to name, because I think for people outside of female identifying, but like for all of us, I think part of what you were asking us about is like that stillness, right? Like what is the difference between like talking a lot or talk therapy and showing up to this program? And Amanda, I think, like enumerated so many of the beautiful parts. But I think what a lot of people can maybe metaphorically understand too is it's like, mindfulness is such a movement, right? But it's like when I think of mindfulness, I think it creates spaciousness, right? Like there's a space between a thought and it being said, right? Like you have a moment to connect mind and body before you really process a feeling or a thought. And that is one of the beautiful things about us being so intentionally silent throughout parts of the program, is like it allows women to drop in, right? Because if we're just talking, we're so in our heads, right? Like we're just like head heavy. And that's why we always kind of use that metaphor of like wolves have 4 paws on the ground, right? And it's oftentimes very foreign. But like if you can create silence and stillness, you oftentimes check in with parts of yourself that are like you haven't checked in with in ages, right? So that feels really intentional too, of like that there needs to be a fair amount of stillness. But also to be with the wolves takes that level of presence, like not talking, not asking questions about what they eat, or just being with them, right? Of like, just take them in, look into their eyes. And so that takes stillness too.
And that silent, allowing the moment to just be what it is like, it really makes you more sensitive to like when the moment needs something and when it doesn't need your help. And that you guys are just so good at that. So.
Yeah. No.
I just want to add one thing that came up when you were speaking, Misha, about that stillness. That what you spoke to earlier, that part about women being tamed. right? I think so much, and this probably goes for many human beings, not just women, but I think there's maybe a collective identity amongst many women of pushing down all of the stuff that comes up that tells us to be powerful, play big, show up, take risks.
Yeah.
Right.
And so this stillness and silence is an opportunity to reconnect with the parts of ourselves that we've suppressed to fit in. Right? So the wolf pack teaches us a different kind of fitting in.
Right.
You know, many women learn that to fit in is to move over. Let me just keep moving over and make space for you, and I'll get as small as I can. Right? There's almost like a reflex that happens amongst a lot of women. Yeah. And the wolves teach us that I'm going to be my biggest, most grounded self. And of course, there's space for all of us, because why wouldn't there be?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so I think the stillness is another opportunity while you see the wolf pack model this, that there's plenty of space for all this personality, all this power, all this primal wisdom. And then in the stillness, you know, perhaps we can reconnect with parts of ourselves that we avoid to stay small. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's so easy in a world when we're busy and there's a million things to do and there's a lot of distraction. And, you know, I think COVID allowed an opening for that.
You literally said the thing I was thinking.
And it's sorry to take your words.
But it means that all of us in that way are pretty much, I mean, we're probably all thinking a lot of the same thing, is that this was such a huge, I don't even want to say a reset, but I feel like it was somebody just hit, an opportunity to get back to those things. And you and I have had so many people on this podcast that have said the same thing.
Yeah, everyone basically.
Or that are reflecting, and that, like you said, people are looking at social issues because there's nothing else to look at. They're looking inward, or at least trying to, because they're coming out to programs like this, or looking at Women Wolves and saying, there's something that I need to, or there's something that's coming up that I need to address. And that there's given the time, there may have been a hand or two though in the room. No, but I think it's such a, and this is, I mean, we can go on for forever. And what I want to do is invite you both back, because I think we need to do a part 2 of this. I think there needs to be a follow-up to really, continue talking about.
I wonder if we can get a guest on with them as well.
We can try, because I think that's what we're going to try.
That might be interesting.
But I guess what I want to so give people information. I know the Women and Wolves coming up is already sold out. It's basically full. What are some ways that people who identify as women can reach out or look at, maybe some upcoming programming that's coming up? Through who can they contact? Where can they go? I guess that's really where, so they can say, when would the next one be? What can I?
Yeah. And before you do that, actually, something's coming up for me that after what Amanda was just saying, the concepts you were talking about that human women are struggling with in life. I find that the female wolves here model the counterpoint, the solution to that more. I mean, I notice it in them more than anything. Like, I mean, Bella, Charlie, Nolly, Willow, Luna, they just I feel the most like primal wisdom just exuding from them all the time. Like this boldness, like take the fear with you concept. Like I just wanted to name that I gained the most in that realm of thought from our female wolves.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. I think it goes back to John's question too of an immersive experience versus talk therapy.
Yeah.
Right. And because that experience of those female wolves is nonverbal.
Yeah,
right?
You can just see
it's
it.
a nonverbal experience of yourself and of them. Right.
And it's undeniable. You see it right away.
And we kind of said this it was all very organic, but it was just like a sentiment that kind of echoed around the circle a little bit towards the end of the closing of this last Women and Wolves circle, that words are oftentimes such a paltry substitute for what we're feeling, right?
Yeah.
And so that is part of like why we create so much stillness, right? Or we actually closed with a movement instead of a word, because that nonverbal experience of each other and of the wolves and of nature is powerful, and it oftentimes can't be distilled down to anything that we can say, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and they're just this like direct pathway to just see it tangibly in real life.
I mean, let's face it. I mean, wolves can speak to us in a way, but I mean, when one of the wolves sort of looks at you and you get that, I mean, that's where that feeling or that energy comes from.
Yeah.
You could look at any of the wolves, but I mean, you're right. It's a teaching aspect that we're blessed enough or lucky enough to be
our
able
female
to deal
wolves
with
are really embodying that.
Absolutely.
So now tell us where we can find information
now that we
about.
Back to your cue, Amanda.
Whenever something comes up in my brain, that's when when I'm inspired to a thought, I can't leave it alone. Otherwise, I won't be able to sleep.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like
absolutely.
if I read something, if someone prompts me to it, I'm like, I don't care about that. So if it's inspired to me, like shot into my thought process, I got to do it right. I got to say something about it. I can't.
Yeah.
I'm glad you named that, Stephen. It's those wolves that really, we probably didn't give enough credit to at the beginning that inspired this program.
Yeah.
I agree.
It's insinuated that, based on what you're saying.
They've been my teachers too.
Yeah.
So grateful for knowing parts of myself that I had no idea existed before I came here.
Yeah, that's true.
So Women and Wolves. So we do have another program on October 10th, which is basically sold out at this point, but feel free to inquire. It's on our website. It's on social media. Anyone can reach out to me at abeer, just like the drink, ABEER, at wolfconnection.org to inquire, because sometimes we do have people that, it's strange times right now. So if we have people drop, we can add more.
Yeah.
And then Misha and I were just talking about offering, because we've seen so much interest and we've been able to do these safely so far with COVID, offering another program the first week of November 7th or 8th. So keep your eye out on social media. If you're on our listserv or the email blasts that go out, social media, and on our website. It will be in all of those locations.
So that's wolfconnection.org for the website. Wolf Connection, all one word, on Instagram, Facebook page, Wolf Connection. So if you guys want to look there, and then obviously look at the program tabs, and that's where you'll see all that information. So I guess we can, Stephen, are you complete?
I'm complete.
Are you, Misha, Amanda, do you guys have anything else to add before we table it?
May I add one thing?
Absolutely.
100 things if you want.
You just cut me right out.
No, absolutely not.
I'll never
Good
cut
thing
you
with
out.
editing.
I know.
No, I was just going to add, because obviously the hope is that people far outside the vicinity of Los Angeles County, are listening to this and get something out of this. And so that is in, Amanda's and my consciousness too, of how can we create, something out of this and distill it into, digital spaces. So it's on our consciousness. We're thinking about it, but I just want to, I just want to pull that in, that obviously not everybody's here and can make the trek to join us. We hope you do someday, but that's not obviously like feasible to do. And so there is that level of like, again, kind of a lot of this wisdom, and I don't know what transpires. We're trying to think about how to distill that into a way for women far and wide, female identifying, to kind of tap into.
Yeah.
So I'm naming that here to also put a little onus on Amanda and I to keep thinking on that.
That's the way it's done.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And you guys, again, you do a fantastic job. And obviously the wolves they're the best. They're the best teachers we have right now.
Yep.
So thank you both. We're definitely we're gonna do this again, sooner than later, so we can get a little bit more information, and we'll facilitate it out to everybody. That's
our first double guest podcast. Oh no, you had only one person here. So.
I have only one person here, so that'll be fine. So we'll do that. Amanda Beer, Misha Thomas, thank you guys so much. Amanda's Instagram is Amanda Beer Wolf Connection, A Beer Wolf Connection. What's your Instagram? Do you remember?
Amanda Wolf
Connection. Sorry.
Beer didn't make it in.
Beer did not make it in. And then Misha, any socials you want to promote? Anything like that? Instagram? Anybody can find you, or
Well,
table that?
I'm slightly inactive, but I do have an account at We Rewild that I will also put the onus on myself to engage in.
Engage. You guys are great. So that'll be that.
Awesome.
Yeah, you guys are awesome. House to everybody out there, and we will speak to you all next time. Bye,
Bye-bye.
everybody.